Oh, it did. If you haven't started your project for Wednesday yet, this will give you a handle at least in what I need you to do for that project. And I wasn't planning on going this way today, but this is good.
You do like the tree diagram, so you do like heads, tails.
Flip 1 can go heads
Tails.
or tails, yes? Beautiful. Could go heads or tails. How about flip 2?
Heads, heads.
Well, either one of the flip 1 results can be split off again to go heads or tails again, yes? Hopefully you see that. And this will help you, like I said, if you haven't started that project for Wednesday, this is a pretty good introduction to it. I wasn't planning on going here, but I'm glad you did. I'm glad you are. Flip 3. I know, it's thrilling. Where does flip 3 go? It could be anything. I mean, if you want heads, heads, it could go heads, tails. It could go tails, heads, tails, heads, heads, tails, tails, heads, tails, yes. And then flip 4. I think you're starting to see the pattern of the results, yes? They're growing, use a word that starts with E.
Exponential.
Yes! They're growing exponentially. Yes, every time if you've ever walked to my office, you see this exact same picture, except instead of H's and T's are smiley faces. Smiley face, 2 smiley faces, 4 smiley faces, 8 smiley faces. I love that picture. Makes me kind of think about how to greet the day every day. You never know what effect something you say to somebody is going to have. So if you can try to make it as neutral or as positive as possible, you never know. That might be exactly what that person needed, and it might do this. Of course, same thing with the frown face, I suppose. Anyway, flip 4. Yes, and it's growing. I'm going to run out of board space pretty soon. But I think you're getting the point. I think we see enough to see what you were talking about before, Des, when you said it looked too normal. So let's bring it a little bit tight in here. Yeah, 16, exactly. I'm running out of space. I apologize. And I'm going to stop at 16 because it's getting a little silly. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, sweet Jesus. There we go. Find me 50%.
That one right there.
You're pointing at my nose.
Is it the one that goes
Flip
heads, tails?
Oh, flip 1! No. Hang on now. Hang on now. I want you to find me 50% for the entire experiment. Because the 50% shouldn't change from trial to trial, should it? I love what you're saying, Josh. So basically, Josh is pointing, and I love what you're saying because you're pointing to every branch. Every branch is 50-50, yes? There's a 0.5 associated with that branch. I'm going to put a little 0.5 right here for 50%. There's also a 0.5 associated with that one. There's also a 0.5 associated with that one. We're getting a little bit 243-ish stuff here. I like where you're going with it, though. These all have a half a chance of happening. Each one of those has a half chance of happening. Everybody buy that? When you flip a coin, half the chance goes with heads and half the chance goes with tails. So every one of these little lines has a 0.5 on it. This is actually one really, really cool way of analyzing false positives and false negatives in drug and disease testing. One of the things we do in 243 is with tree diagrams like this. So that's one place the 50% is. But often, how would you explain the heads and tails, and they keep going. They don't stop with those. They keep going on these branches too. It just gets kind of ridiculous to keep writing. Where's the 50% though? In the entire experiment. That's 50% for that particular outcome, for that particular outcome. How would you explain? Why would you explain? How would you explain my old stat professor that saw 12 tails in a row come and still wanted to bet on heads? Remember, I laughed at him and you laughed too? How would you explain to your neighbor why you laughed at him? Please, Amy.
Because it's 50% the whole time.
Anytime. At any point you stop. So, I like that. I like that very much.
So, why would he think that it...
Why would a PhD statistician think that, Vince? Why? I don't know. I have no good answer. He's gone. Now he's back in Delaware. Josh, what were you going to say? Go.
I totally see.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
It's all good.
Sorry.
No, it's all good.
So, when we heard that your guys' guesses on the front board last Monday were too normal or too regular, what did that mean, too normal or too regular, with respect to the 50%?
There wasn't that many like outliers either.
And defining outliers as is what? Defining outliers as?
Like just out of the normal range.
What does that mean? I'm sorry to keep picking on you.
I know.
Sumi, help her out!
I remember it being like seemingly it was way too perfect.
What does perfect mean?
If there wasn't enough clumps.
I think that's what we were getting at. When, yeah, sure, whatever. It gets you away from me. When you guys wrote up your results on the board, it very often went like tails, heads, tails, 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 heads, heads, tails, heads, tails, tails, heads, heads. There were never really huge clumps anywhere. And then when we started going to the sideboard and actually flipping coins, we started getting those outliers from our result, the 3 to 7s, where we had 6 heads in a row, and then 3 heads in a row, followed by 5 tails, weird streaks of tail, streaks that Vince saw when he saw 12 tails. And he considered that to be something weird, but it's actually predictable if you think about the millions and billions and trillions of times coins have been flipped. And if you look at, if you think about all of these results as themselves, look at this one. That one right there is heads, 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 heads. That's a clump, right? There's no tails in there. This one down here, if you follow this branch out, is tails, 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 tails. If this doesn't make any sense, don't worry, your project on Wednesday will make perfect sense. Like I said, I wasn't going to go this route with today, but it's great that we did. But that's just as likely as going heads, tails, right? Heads, tails is just as likely as heads, 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 heads. But if it's just as likely, that means we should see a disproportionate number of clumpiness trials as opposed to flip-flop back and forth trials. Michael made a comment, I forget what he said on Monday. He pointed over to that sideboard and said something to that effect where there are so many clumpy trials over here and there were almost no clumpy trials, except for Anya's. 5 heads, 5 tails. Remember that one? Just wrote 5 heads and 5 tails. And I was like, now that in particular is a very, very unusual result. Because going all heads, then all tails, or all tails, then all heads is like a 1 in, I don't know, it's like a 1 in 1,000 shot. But nonetheless, the clumps are what I was interested in. Those clumps of results. Randomness tends to happen in clumps. Good, Sumi. That's what I was looking. And Des too for getting the out of the normal. What we're doing. So clumpiness. Clumpiness.
Clumpiness is not a word.
Say that again.
Clumpiness is not a word.
It is now.
It was trickiness, but it is now.
Just settle down back there. Josh, you just settle yourself down. Clumpiness is a word, so is scooching. Although don't Google it in Urban Dictionary, it's got a PG definition I don't like very much. But in mathematics, they have very, very good mathematical meanings, clumpiness. You don't get, and we're going to come back to that today when we start looking at dice. Hopefully we have time today to look at dice. You get, actually we're see it a bunch of different times today. Randomness is very hard to do. I used to yell at Jenny Cruikshank. Anybody ever taken Total Fit here at HHP 185 TF? Great class, super, super fun. It's a cross-country ski climbing training class on steroids. And one of the exercises we do in there are called 3-2-1 push-ups. So you drop into a plank. A 3 is all the way up. A 2 is halfway down, and a 1 is hovering above the ground. So if you've done yoga, I think that's a yoga pose. Plank, low. You can do it on your arms too, for sure. So either on your wrists or on your arms. What's it called when you hover in plank right above the ground in yoga? Is that called something?
Chaturanga.
Thank you. I knew it had a name. Is halfway up anything? Or is that just halfway up?
I think that's just like the transit.
That's the transit. You pass through that on the way from one to the other. So what Jenny does is she calls out random numbers, and we have to go to that position. So she'll say 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and then usually on the 6th one, I'm like, would you be more random? And she always, what the hell are you talking about? Because what's Jenny not doing?
Mixing it up.
She's not clumping. She's mixing it too well. I'm not getting 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1. And then I start calling them out. And one time, just to be a wise ass, I brought my TI to class. So I'm down on the ground, hitting random numbers, and using that to and the kids went ape for it, because they ended up getting really nice lactic flushes. Because at one point I started going, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and it was really wonderful. As opposed to 1, 1, 1, 1, and you're like, nah. So being random is hard. It's impossible for humans to be. We suck at it. I mean, there's varying degrees of how badly we are at being random. But you saw a beautiful comparison between the front board and that sideboard on Monday. Fair enough? Good. Then we ran a bunch of experiments after that. That was fun.